Hi friends, welcome to my YouTube channel Roadmap to Clear Competitive Exams. This is about me, and due to personal and official commitments, I was not able to make videos these years. Now I'm working as a government employee, and after my official working hours, I'm thinking of making few videos sharing my knowledge with the viewers, which will be helpful for the government job aspirants, especially who are uh, appearing for banking exams, SSC exams, railway exams, etc., and also state PCS exams. So in this video, we'll be discussing about finding number of squares in a given figure. So usually in reasoning section, these kind of questions will be asked. A particular figure will be given and you will be asked to find number of squares or number of rectangles or number of triangles. So it is a time consuming question. If you keep on counting them in the given figure, then it will consume lots of time. So there are few tricks. Using those tricks, you can find the solution to these questions very easily, and you can in turn save time and energy.
One of the questions frequently asked in the exam is to find the total number of squares. So they might ask you total number of squares in a given figure. When the figure is a square, the formula is different. When the figure is rectangle, the formula is different. So now first let us find the total number of squares in a given figure when the given figure is square. So this is square and there are lots of square inside this. So there's a trick to find the total number of squares when the given figure is a square. So this is a square and within this square there are lots of squares. So first step is to write the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 squares within this big square. So number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now the total number of squares in a given figure is the sum of squares of these number. 1 square plus 2 square plus 3 square plus 4 square plus 5 square equals 1 plus 4 plus 9 plus 16 plus 25. So this is equal to 55. So total number of squares in a given figure is 55. And this formula is very important. And this applies only when this bigger polygon, which we are seeing here, is a square. If this polygon, bigger polygon, there is second condition. There is second kind of a problem. Second kind is when you are asked to find total number of squares. When you are asked to find the total number of squares in a rectangle. This is a rectangle and within this there are many squares. This is another kind of problem frequently asked in competitive examinations. Here you are asked to find total number of squares in a given figure. The given figure is rectangle and you have to find the total number of squares. So first you take this row and count how many squares are there in this row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 squares in this row. So write R equals 7. Now, second step, find how many squares are there in this column. 1, 2, 3. So in this column there are 3 squares. In this row there are 7 squares. Now the formula is to find the total number of squares in a rectangle. The formula is R into C plus R minus 1 into C minus 1. Very quickly you can find the answer. 7 into 3 plus 7 minus 1 into 3 minus 1. This equals 21 plus 6 into 2, 21 plus 12, 33. So total number of squares in a given rectangle is 33. So you can use these tricks and find the solution to the problem very quickly. If you keep on counting, it will take lots of time, and in competitive examinations, the main thing that you have to keep in mind is to save the time. This is how you can save the time. Now let us take few examples and try to solve them. Squares within the square. This is one of the examples which is frequently asked in competitive exams like SSC, banking and railways. So squares within squares. So this is a simple example that I am taking, but in examination they may ask you few more, they can add few more squares within the squares. So the trick is, in the first example we had discussed that if the given figure is a square and there are smaller squares, what you will be doing, you will be first numbering them and then you will be finding the total number of squares by this method. Sum of squares of these numbers will give you total number of squares. That is 1 plus 4 is equal to 5. So how many squares of this kind are there? 1, this is 1 square, this is another one, same nature but bigger in size. This is the third one, this square. So this square contributes to how many squares? 5. This square contributes to 5 squares. This square contributes to 5 squares. So total number of squares in the given figure is 5 plus 5 plus 5 is equal to 15. You can pause the video and you can check it yourself. You can also manually calculate the things and check it yourself whether the answer is right or not. So these are few tricks to solve the questions within less time. Another kind of question. So if you know the basics, then you will be able to solve these questions with ease. This is one big square, and within this big square there are smaller squares. These are all squares, and this is one kind of question which could be asked. These are all squares. So we know that these squares, smaller ones, in the previous example we know that, these smaller ones contribute to 5 number of squares. Total number of squares within this smaller square is 5. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 squares of such kind. So the total number of squares, these smaller squares contribute is 4 squares into 5. Total number of squares these smaller squares contribute is 20. Now we have to calculate how many squares this bigger square contributes. This bigger square, this is nothing but what? Similar to type 1 example. This is one big square. This is one big square from which, and now remove these smaller squares from this figure, and this will look like type 1 example. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is one big square, and within this big square there are small squares. So how many squares this big square contributes without these smaller squares? This 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. How many squares this bigger square contributes? It is 1 square plus 2 square plus 3 square plus 4 square. So 1 plus 4 plus 9 plus 16 is equals 30. So the total number of squares in a given figure is 30 plus 20. So total is 30 plus 20 is equal to 50. So the total number of squares in this given figure is 50. If you know the basics, such complicated figures could be decoded. This is how you decode. You check this. You check first. What we did, we found the total number of squares of these small figures. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we remove this. We remove this figure because we have already found how many squares are there, and we know that these smaller squares contribute to 20 number of squares. And after calculating that, we are left with this big figure, and this is nothing but the case, first case that we had solved. One big square and smaller squares. So how many squares this figure contribute? This figure contributes 1 square plus 2 square plus 3 square plus 4 square number of squares. That is 30 number of squares. 30 plus 20 will give you 50. This is the total number of squares in a given figure. Another kind of example. This is a given figure. So again, this is a similar kind of example. What you have to do, you have to just decode the figures. You take this outside. Finding total number of squares in a given figure. This is one figure. From this we can calculate the total number. 1 square plus 2 square is equal to 1 plus 4 is equal to 5. So this figure contributes 5 squares, and this is one more square. This contributes 1. So this contributes 5 and this contributes 1. So total number of squares in a given figure is 5 plus 1 equals 6. Now let us see an example, complicated figure. The figures will be given complicated. The figures will be complicated. You have to just decode it, and then you have to just apply the basics. The basic thing is this. So the question is to find total number of squares in a given figure. The given figure seems to be a bit complicated, but if you decode it, you can find the answer very easily. The previous question, the previous scenario which we had seen, this scenario, so many such figures are embedded in this. First, this one, this small square, we'll number it as number 1. This figure, and this one along with this one. Together, these and this together, we'll call it as number 2. And this one, larger one, we'll number it as number 3. So we have number 2 and number 3. This number 2 and number 3, these two figures are of this nature. So number 2, this square contributes 5 plus 1, that is 6 number of squares. We have seen this from previous example. And this one, number 1, the figure is of this kind, and this contributes how much? 1 plus 1 square plus 2 square, 1 plus 4 is equal to 5. 5 number of squares. Total number of squares in number 1 figure is 5. Total number of squares in number 2 and 3. Number 2 figure contributes, number 2 is of this nature, and number 3 is of also this nature. Number 2 figure is here. It contributes how much? 6 number of squares. Number 3 figure contributes 6 number of squares. So total number of squares is 5 plus 6 equals 17. So total number of squares in a given figure is 17. It's very simple. All that you have to do is decode the figure, find the number of squares individually, and then add it up.
Thank you, friends. Thanks for watching the video. If you have liked the video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. And in the next video, we'll be dealing with finding number of triangles in a given figure and number of rectangles in a given figure. Thank you.